Welcome, everybody, to the show. Joining me is our fantabulous co-host, Dancing Dan, the Dancing Man. And eventually, we will have Herman Lutman as soon as Herman figures out whatever's going on with his camera.
I'm here.
So that's great.
So are you there in spirit, Herman?
The spirit voice of Herman Lutman is joining us this evening.
Yes, in keeping with Halloween spirit, I guess.
Well, I guess we're not going to fix that problem on your side, eh, Herman?
I don't know. I shut off Discord. I got nothing else running, and it doesn't want to access my camera on this version of StreamYard. Is this a different StreamYard? Because the link you sent me looked different this time.
It looked different for me too, but it worked. So,
you want me to send it to you again, Herman?
If you'd like.
I don't believe the link to be the problem.
I'd like nothing better. Herman. I just put an H and you're the first name that comes up. See, Herman? You see?
Oh, I'm honored.
There you go. There's that strange link again. It's sent.
Okay, so I will leave and come back in. How's that sound?
You leave and come back.
All right.
So, Artie, how are you, man?
I'm okay.
So how's
Cat's still sick, but you know, we're working on that. I took him to a different vet today, and he gave him a shot, which we believe is going to help. So,
how old is the cat?
8 or 9.
Oh, well, that's a young cat.
So not super old. He's had this like sinus issue for a while, but it's never been this bad where we thought we were going to lose him. So hopefully we can get him out of the. You know, we got to get him eating again and all that stuff. He's drinking water, but he's really not eating very much, which is typically not a great sign.
So look, before I ask you how's your 15-year anniversary going, let me say hello to some people. And
go ahead.
Fucko says hello. And what do you mean, my God, they're on time? We're always on time, Artie. Christopher Press, my paisan from down south. Robert from Kilroy, my God, ready to run the kids, so listen in the car. Of course you will. And John Clark, Dale Brady, Carl Kreiser from the War Game Boot Camp, and Beat Cafe. What's up, Beat Cafe? You gotta let me know when a con comes up, huh? Beat Cafe, you gotta let me know. You know what I'm saying? Hey,
does that mean you'll show up at that con?
I don't know, man.
See, there you go.
I mean,
it's a wonderful experience. I understand.
Hey, Stigler's in the house.
Stigler is in the house.
I didn't know he was designing a game.
Yeah, I actually knew about that, but you know, I got all kinds of little birds talking to me. So,
well, I mean, I was doing the news, and then
really.
I'm like. The GMT thing, and I see this game coming up, Swords and something. I don't know what his game is called. And I said, who's the designer? Looks like, I don't know, Miklos or something.
Who's this Dickerson guy?
Yeah, the name wasn't there. I couldn't see it.
GMT actually doesn't usually put the name of the designer prominently on the pages. I'm not 100% sure why.
Well, now it's there.
You'd think they'd put that on like right on the banner or something like that, but typically they don't. They tell you who designed the banner, but not all the time who designed the game. I mean, it's always on the page, right? It's just not necessarily prominent.
And you know, we should have Stigler on and talk about the solo aspect of that game.
It's a pretty decent solo experience. I mean, there's no solo like system or anything, but it's a chip pull game, so it plays pretty well solitaire.
I wonder what he thinks about that.
Well, he loves that system.
But he loves that system, and it solos very well. So what the hell is he talking about?
Well, he doesn't solo it.
Well, he could.
He doesn't believe in solo witchcraft. What we got to do is get Stigler and David Thompson in the same room together and watch the sparks fly.
Yeah.
Although David's so mild-mannered, it probably will not be much in the way of sparks, but you know.
Yeah, but
it's a cute idea.
He's gonna have intel on Stigler. That's why.
We got to get Wayne Hansen. That's who we get for point counterpoint with Stigler. Actually,
the cop that is Wayne Hansen.
That's who we get.
Hey, so how's it going? How's the birthday party going?
It's going good. Looks like we have gotten Herman on the camera.
Yes.
So that's fantastic. So yeah, it's been
Well,
going good. We've had giveaways every time. There's been a couple of hiccups shipping to Canada because it's Canada.
You want to ship to Canada? I swear to God.
I'm not even talking about the money. I expected.
Nah,
I'm not shocked that it costs $45 to ship a game to Canada. I'm
easier
just
to
shocked
invade.
they wanted to levy an additional charge of another $30.
Of course,
on
because
top of that.
if you can't screw your brothers, who can you screw? You
Exactly.
know what I mean?
These Canadians, I'll tell you.
You know, and I swear it's easier to invade Canada than to do postage.
That's true. I mean, the
That's
Americans did it after all when they captured Montreal.
Are much more desirable too.
They never captured Montreal. That's some pipe dream you had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. By the way, I asked Herman to come on. Fuck. Oh.
Don't use DHL to ship anything if you wanted to get there.
I think he just hurt himself.
Yeah. I asked Herman to come on because Mark Walker sent some of his bullies to my house. And when I opened the door,
these were the Canadian bullies,
the guy
so they
grabbed
were
me
very
by the
polite.
throat and he said, "This is what you're gonna say tonight." And I said,
"This is what you're gonna say tonight." Sorry,
I might ask Herman. And Herman,
Yeah.
I just want to say, and I've never said this. I've only said this to you. I've met you once, and you're one of the nicest guys I've ever met, Herman. I mean,
thank you.
Like, I mean,
we still talk about that trip to Montreal, man. That was so much
because
fun.
we had such a great time. It was
Artie,
everybody was happy.
We went to this little Hungarian place, this little hole-in-the-wall Hungarian place in Montreal. It was fantastic.
I never been, and look at that.
Yep.
It was great.
Thank
Anyways,
you.
Herman.
That's very nice of you to say that.
Okay, so Herman, why you here, huh?
Now to the real stuff.
So what's going on, Herman?
Absolutely nothing.
It's actually, you know what?
Oh yeah, all this free time, it's great.
Okay, Herman, kick it off before I spoil it.
Well, I mean, the big news is the second edition of A Most Fearful Sacrifice will kickstart tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow is the 26th, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. So I know a lot of people have been. I've been answering as many questions as I can about it. I mean, essentially, it's the same game. We sold out of the first edition of the game, I think, in 3 or 4 weeks or something like that.
Well, yeah, man.
So Mark and I decided, well, let's just put it out there again. I mean, people have been asking for it. And so what I did was I updated I updated the rule book and the scenario book for all the errata and anything that we could find that we could fix up nice. I mean, that's where the fans really come in. They're really very helpful. Artie, playtesting 12 scenarios, and getting every single aberration figured out for rule book wise, scenario wise.
I'm still upset about that improper use of a semicolon on page 14.
It's exactly right. And you really
post an angry letter.
Unless you got a crew of 100 playtesters and developers, you really need to depend on the public to really, work through the game and then find these little itty bitty things. And admittedly, some not so itty bitty things. So we fixed all that. And then, of course, the big bugaboo from the first edition was, of course, the size of the player aids and the charts. And now that those have been fixed, so they're 11 by 17. So the proper size.
Is there going to be an update kit also, or no?
Right. So that's the other big question is, what's happening with the people who bought the first edition, and there is an update kit available. If I remember correctly, I think you can download this stuff for free, or you can order hard copies of the charts and the new rule book.
Okay.
Carl, we are literally answering this question right now.
Yes, Carl, right on the
timely
spot.
as ever.
Yes. So other than that, we haven't figured out all the stretch goals yet. I know the border strips will be a stretch goal because those are very popular. So that's when you can segment off the scenarios if they don't take up the whole map. And there's going to be a new scenario that Claude actually designed. Claude Whalen, who's who is not only a developer on this game, but is also a designer in the Blind Sword series. I think you've done some of his openings, ARDWULF. He did Kernstown and the Wilson's Creek game, which I can't remember the name of right off the top of my head.
Thunder at Dawn? Was it Thunder? No. No,
might be Thunder at Dawn. Yeah. Or This Day Was Ours was the Bull Run game, right?
Yes.
Nonetheless, Claude designed the scenario as it's called Meade Attacks. It's going to be the 4th day of Gettysburg. And the scenario is, of course, Meade trying to knock out Robert E. Lee on the 4th day after the failed Pickett's charge, and Lee's trying to get himself together, and Meade decides to go after him right away on the 4th day. The problem, of course, is that it rained like hell on the 4th day. So that's the big thing that's overlapping everything, is when is the rain going to stop operations on the 4th day? So Claude put that together, and that's going to be one of the stretch goals. I don't know, honestly, which stretch goal, but it's going to be in there somewhere.
And it's a Kickstarter thing. Okay. So you don't know how many copies that are going to be printed, right?
I don't. I know in the first one, I believe we did 1,500.
You see, that's it. That's a small run, man.
Well, this hobby, it's not that small.
It's Herman Luttman, for God's sake, man.
So I honestly don't know how many copies he's planning on for this particular edition.
I would say,
obviously, it would depend on how well it does and all that. I mean,
yeah,
that's one of the reasons to do this.
And,
I mean, it looks good. I mean, there's hundreds of people that signed up for the, notify me when the thing launches. So there were hundreds of people that signed up for that. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. So there's your goal reached right off the bat.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. Herman, it's funny. I remember speaking to you about this. You are now the authority on Gettysburg and like almost the American Civil War, just by sheer volume of designs. For God's sakes, whether you like it or not, Herman.
I will never claim to be an authority. There are a lot of people a lot smarter than I am about this kind of stuff.
But I mean, you got a poop load of games on the ACW, man. It's unbelievable.
That was almost by accident, to be honest with you. I was a big Napoleonics guy back in the 90s. I did all miniatures games of Napoleon. My expertise was Napoleonics.
So how come you're not kicking off a Napoleon game?
Well,
was that a secret? Will you be doing something like that?
It's possible.
Oh, I see. It's the shut up clause. Okay.
I got a lot of shut up clauses. I don't know why.
Well, folks have a bunch of irons in the fire too, and nobody really ever knows exactly what's going to materialize first necessarily. So, who knows? Unless you're super organized. And I'm not.
You're absolutely right, especially in this industry. There's a couple of designs that have been sitting at companies for like a year now. Actually, I have one design, Miracle at Dunkirk, which has been in the hopper for 3 years or something like that.
More than that.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, over at Legion.
Yeah,
that looks neat too.
I'm sorry?
That looks neat too.
Thank you. Actually, we made some progress. Edmund Hudson, who's doing the maps for Revolution, he actually just redid the map for Miracle at Dunkirk. And what we did, I asked him... oh, thank you, Mike. I actually asked him to... Stigler's always got something to say. I actually asked Edmund to flip the map around. So the traditional view is from France looking north, right? And I asked him to flip it around so that you're sitting on the side, on the English Channel side. So it was a little more immersive, that you're actually on the beaches and the Germans are approaching. What's up, Ed?
That's a cool idea.
Thank you. I just thought it'd be something different. And Edmund had no problem doing that. And he did a beautiful job in the map. So now we got to work on the pieces, and it's supposed to be early next year.
So this fantasy Napoleonic game that might appear one day, Herman, will it appear with the same publisher? Hopefully, if that ever happens, Flying Pigs, or is it with somebody else?
This supposed hypothetical project is going to be with somebody else, if it ever happens. Supposedly.
Okay.
In my dreams.
Wow.
I mean, Herman's got an in with every publisher at this point, right? So
not everyone.
Oh yeah, well, Decision Games, Herman.
One of the things I wanted to do when I got into this, I was kind of determined to try to do something with everybody, with every publisher. Sometimes that works out, and sometimes it doesn't. Well, in the Shattered Union series, which is another game that just came out, The Hill of Death. So that's going to be a whole series of easier Civil War and more obscure battles. We do have Dale Gutt is going to do a game on Brandy Station. And if that does well, if people like that, you know, we'll see what other cavalry battles we can do. Or maybe maybe do a couple in one box or something like that.
So how did it happen to emerge that you ended up with this large list of additional team members who are designing and developing the games and the systems that you've created?
That's a good question. So the only guy who's from the development team is Claude. And boy, he came on board early on. I think it was with Stonewall Sword. And he just did such a great job. We just kept him on, and eventually he got so good at it. He's actually a better player at Blind Swords than I am, because he's actually played it more than I have. I tell everybody the story of the end of Most Fearful Sacrifice. I was just designing the scenarios and pumping them out, doing the research, figuring out where everybody goes, getting the general, getting the general gist of the scenarios, getting them all laid out, and sending them off without playing them to Claude and Steve and Zeke and Fred, and they would play it out, send me back what needed to be fixed. So these guys actually played the game more than I have. I don't know if other designers go through that. I guess it depends on the game. You know, a big game like that with that many scenarios, you know, it's a lot of work for a designer to test all that himself.
Is that why?
There are senses in which this is true, I think.
Yeah, I think the Napoleonic, they're more set piece than the ACW, I think, right? You know, obviously it's more linear.
Big battles certainly are.
Yeah. There's a more of a linear structure to everything. The ACW has more of a flow to it. Now, of course, you got in Napoleonics, you got a far greater cavalry presence, right? Massed cavalry, heavy cavalry, cuirassier, everything. So all that's got to be accounted for as well.
And you all used very differently than they were, or used in a lot of other ways that we really didn't see much of in the American Civil War.
Yeah, it's interesting because still in 1866, in the Austro-Prussian War and the Franco-Prussian War, you still have those. And so, I mean, this is after the Civil War, right? The American Civil War. You still have these massed cavalry formations in Europe charging.
Who would have thought the Austrians, of all people, would be behind the times?
That's right.
Herman, you're when I say an authority, I'm using that word like that on the Franco-Prussian War, man.
Yeah, well, I'm not an authority. I mean,
well, yeah,
it's just something I got interested in thanks to Rob Markham. Well, I don't know if you know who Rob Markham is, but he was a designer with 3W and a few other. I always loved the way he designed games, and he did one called Blood and Iron, which was a Franco-Prussian War game, and I just got interested in the period off of that. And then I realized there's not a lot of games on the Franco-Prussian War, and when I was reading the history of it, I realized when I designed At Any Cost is a campaign that occurred that nobody's ever done a game on that. And there's two huge battles that occurred within a couple of days of each other in this campaign. I said, wow, this is a great opportunity to do something that nobody's done before. I mean, it's hard to find a historical, a battle or a campaign that nobody's ever done before. That's significant. So that's kind of how I led into all that. So I really started studying up on that. Then, of course, when you study that, you study the Austro-Prussian War and the Second War, Italian independence. So that all kind of ties together in that era.
Now, at any cost uses pretty much the same blind sword system, right?
Pretty much. It was actually predates the Civil War blind sword. So there are obviously some differences, especially in scale. But again, all blind swords related games, whether it's Black Swan or it's At Any Cost, the central theme is that historical chaos, right? That idea that these pieces are not going to act exactly the way you want them to. So it tries to inject a little bit more actual, more of a historical feel of what these commanders had to go through as far as orders not being followed, units doing things on their own. And how do you deal with those situations as a commander, right? Or as a game player in this case.
Herman,
so, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, so that feeling goes throughout all the blind swords. And mechanically, things change here and there. It's chit pull, card pull. There might be some different CRTs, but the general idea is I have to think on my feet, right? In other words, the battle's evolving in front of you, and you have to prepare for all contingencies. And things are going to happen that game players don't like. Pieces are going to do things on their own, and enemy pieces are going to do things on their own, and you have to just deal with that. And it's designed with the feeling that, well, this is what happened historically.
Well, isn't that fog of war, for God's sakes? Chaos?
Well, it's chaos and fog of war. That's
so why wouldn't someone like that? What they want it scripted out like linear?
Because game players play games for different reasons, right? So you're either want to have the best strategy that always works regardless of circumstances, or you want to try to experience the simulation of a battle.
You mean, what did you said? The same strategy regardless of circumstances. Well, that's just stupid.
Well, no, but if you look at the old Avalon Hill games, the old traditional hex and CAR were more, I remember a friend of mine became an expert in Russian campaign, the old Russian campaign game, and they had tournaments of that game because it became almost chess-like. He knew the opening moves and where everybody went to win every time. He actually destroyed the game for me because I couldn't play it, recreationally with him. So there was
in the Russian campaign, there's no chaos.
Well, aside from CRT die rolls, look, every war game's got some kind of chaos in it.
Yeah.
But a 3-to-1 attack in the old days in Avalon Hill was pretty much a guaranteed win, right? 4-to-1
back in the day. There's also no command and control mechanism, as I recall, in Russian campaign. Mm-hmm. So you pretty much just do all your attacks and attack everywhere that you feel like you can get a good odds ratio.
Right. So is the reprint of this Russian campaign exactly the same?
It shouldn't be. But I don't believe it's a radically different game either. I believe, based on my understanding of the new one, so we're talking about the GMT Russian Campaign Deluxe Edition or whatever they're calling it. That's pretty close to coming out now. I think that is, I would describe those changes from what I've heard as fine tuning, and that's about it.
But
were there any expansions or optional rules that they maybe added in, or
yeah, probably. There's a rich history of options, from the general and all that stuff. They might as well put that stuff in.
Yeah, but since then we've grown so much. It's been more than fine tuned. It's been changed. Cards are in.
So one of the things you see though is games that get played and played and played and played and played and played over the course of decades, which is the case with the Russian campaign. It was the case with something like Third Reich. Is people find the holes in those designs, right? And there sometimes we see magic strategies emerge that are very difficult, if not impossible, to beat, right? Now, I'm not really up on what those magic strategies might be for Russian campaign in particular, but it is one of those games that keeps getting played, right? I mean, I see at any decent sized convention where there's wargamers, somebody's going to throw down a copy of Avalon Hill's version of the game on a table and start playing it. I've seen that multiple times.
Yep.
So people like it. There's other evolutions of Russian campaign, like say Russia Besieged, that other folks have done to kind of build on that and to try and address those issues, just like we've seen with Third Reich, where there are a lot of games that are answers to Third Reich, even if they depart from it mechanically quite a bit, right? We've seen the same thing with Russian campaign. Any like Russian front game that covers the whole thing, unless it's Europa, is a kind of an answer to Russian campaign, right? Europa is kind of its own thing, and then we've got answers to Europa too.
Yeah.
So
Drangnak Osten and all those, yes.
So Artie, when you play some of these large monster war games, God, what was I gonna say?
I don't know. What were you gonna say?
Is there chance factor other than the CRT? What about random events? Random events, for God's sake, man.
There's essentially two ways to bring that uncertainty into a tabletop war game. Okay, you can do it with randomness, either off the CRT or random events or cards or whatever, right? And you can use Fog of War. Those two things are the sources of uncertainty. Some games use one, some games use the other, some games use both. So,
right.
You know, have you ever seen that footage? I think the book was called Spearhead. They used in a German town, a famous German town, that the church, the steeples there. What's it called? Herman, help me here.
Cologne.
I think it was, where there was a tank battle between a Patton and some panther or something, or Jagdpanzer. And
right.
I mean, it wasn't just between the tank and the tank. There was so many events. A woman came flying out, driving in a car, this and that. And I mean, that's what happened, man. It's like, you know.
So imagine though, if you had some kind of random event mechanism. Doesn't matter what kind of game you're playing, right? Just imagine you have some kind of random event mechanism whereby you either have this table that you roll on and it gives you a random event, or maybe you have a deck of cards that give you random events, and you play that game 100 times. You're going to know that deck by heart, right? So you're going to reduce uncertainty through repeated play. The only game I could think of with that kind of thing that you really don't get that effect with is maybe Absolute Victory from Compass, and that's because there's a whole like 120-page book of random events that you could play at them, and it takes 50 to 100 hours to play. So that's probably an exaggeration, actually. But you're not going to probably play it 100 times, and there's like hundreds or maybe even a couple thousand random events in that thing.
I find that realistic. I find that very realistic.
That's the heart of that game, actually. That's what makes that game interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
it's on my shopping list.
To Artie's point before, Dan, if you want to see gamers freak out, at Origins, what is it? The Armchair Dragoons, right? They run a double blind umpired game session. You want to see guys freak out. Guys who are great. Guys who are great tabletop war game hex encounter players, all of a sudden you put them in an environment where they only go by limited intelligence and what the umpire tells them, and they have you have never seen people fall apart so fast in your life.
That's why I tell people to, even if they're not into this kind of thing, to go and play that Kriegspiel. Because it's really illuminating to see. If you're used to, the tabletop, where even in a high Fog of War situation, you've really got a lot of information about what's going on.
It's such an interesting psychological study of people, and yourself. Like when you're put in that situation of, well, I'm not sure what's over there, and the guy could be lying to me. So what do you do? And these are realistic decisions that commanders have to make, right? Well, I better send out a cavalry or armored car, cavalry, whatever is appropriate for the time period, and go find out what's going on over there. Something you would never do in a straight up hex encounter war game, right? So you're sitting.
Not in most of them, yeah.
Right. You're sitting there going, well, I got to figure out what's around me, where's the enemy, you know.
Well, okay, yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
that I can even beat that. I mean, sometimes you not only don't know where the enemy forces are, you're
You know
not
where you
sure
are.
where your own forces are.
That's true.
And
But
very few games reflect. There are a couple, but there very few games reflect that.
And who runs that, Brent?
Yeah.
Brant kind of runs the whole area, and Jim wasn't there last year, but
Right.
often it's Jim Ozarski running that.
Okay, so
A tremendous learning opportunity to participate in that.
absolutely.
That's just beautiful. Beautiful.
I would almost make that mandatory, a mandatory experience for any wargamers to go through.
Yeah, I agree. I think every wargamer should go do that once. Maybe you won't do it again. Maybe it wasn't fun, but you'll learn something.
Why wouldn't it be fun? Why wouldn't it be fun?
Well, some people don't like it because they got to talk to people. Some people probably don't like that they have such limited information, and it's real limited information too.
Now that's interesting. That's exactly right, because I mean, some of the feedback I get on the blind sword system is people don't like the fact that things are happening that you can't control.
I think that's a bit of a ridiculous criticism, to be honest. With this particular system, there are systems that, in the name of inputting chaos into the game, which is laudable by itself, sort of deprotagonize the players, right? That take away player agency. And they don't give you, rather than just putting limitations on player agency, that cause you to better engage with the game. I do think there are games like that. I don't think Blind Swords is like that.
You know what? Because everybody freaks out because any plan in an attack always goes through and works out well, right? No, it doesn't work out well. It's always fucked up. It's so that's what war is. So why is the Kriegspiel thing? It's just, it's realistic. It's like, well, there was a herd of sheep walking through there, and shit happens. What do you want? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
I think it was Moltke that said a commander-in-chief can do nothing after he issues his initial orders and the battle starts. That's it.
That's it.
The only thing you can do after that is introduce fresh units. That's about it.
That's it. And deal with the situations that are happening. Oh my God, we got decimated there. Okay, don't go there. You can go here or whatever. I don't understand.
Well, one of the eye openers for me personally was that Fred went to a lecture by John Priest, who wrote one of the Gettysburg books that I used as a source for Most Fearful Sacrifice, and he said that modern historians, modern gamers, modern people don't realize how much smoke is created on an ACW battlefield. Right?
There's no smokeless powder yet.
But
there's no smokeless powder yet.
Right. So he says people don't appreciate that by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, nobody can see anything. There's smoke, there's fire, there's horses running around screaming, right? Like Artie said before, you don't even know who your friendly units are.
This is how commanders accidentally stumble into enemy troops thinking they're friendly.
That's right. Right, exactly. That exactly happened. So, I mean, again, a battlefield, I tend to think battlefield, if I have to make a call, I go to the chaos side if I have to make a call, right? Yep.
Herman, have you had any experience with either the Civil War Brigade series or the Napoleonic Brigade series from the gamers?
I played them way back in the day when they first came out. What was that, in the 90s or so, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Is the Civil War Brigade series the one where you had to write out orders? Is that
yeah. Well, I mean, they're both like that, and then both successor series to CWB both do that too. The regimental sub-series, and then that turned into Line of Battle, which is the current effort. There's 3 games in that series out, and they're working on the Wilderness. So, speaking of that, are we going to see the Wilderness in Blind Swords?
Somewhere along the line, it's funny because I was taking suggestions for what to do with Shattered Union, at least, and Wilderness came up quite a few times. Now, I think there's a big Wilderness project that MMP's working on.
Yep, that's the Line of Battle. It's called No Turning Back.
Yeah. So if I do something like that, I would probably hold it off for a little bit. And to answer a previous question,
do not wait for MMP. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, go ahead. You're gonna be okay.
All right. To answer an earlier question about Antietam, I know that Revolution in the Regimental Blind Sword series, somebody's working on an Antietam, not the entire battle. It's just, I think, Sunken Road part or something. I believe. I think it's that flank. Yeah, you know, Roger and I basically decided, and I know this has changed a little bit, but that basically Longstreet Attacks was about as big as you'd want to get for a regimental Civil War battle.
Oh, I thoroughly disagree, but
okay.
I can understand his position on that.
Right. You know, you can only put so many chits in a cup before it becomes ridiculous, right? So all of Antietam is not possible. A part of Antietam will get done. Now, Regimental Wilderness, is that the one we were just talking about?
No, this is GBACW.
Okay, right.
That's in the works over eventually from GMT. I don't know how close it is, but it kind of smells like it's close. It's getting close-ish.
Oh my God!
So there's a lot of wilderness games on the Wilderness coming.
God, Regimental Wilderness sounds. Ugh.
Oh, it's big. Yeah, it's going to be big. I mean, that's Regimental Antietam is a really big game, right? I mean, it's the one I've played is the Gamers None But Heroes, and I believe it's 2 maps. Density's pretty high. There's a lot of troops. A lot more troops show up as the battle goes on. It's pretty hairy. So you know, how as a publisher, I mean, I would think about how big a game do I really want to deal with, right? I don't think Legion has ever done anything more, or Revolution, I should say. More than maybe 2 or maybe 3 counter sheets. Nothing that I'm aware of anyway. I think Longstreet Attacks might be their biggest game ever, actually. That's possible.
Well, Thunder in the Ozarks, I think, is the only one that has 2 maps.
Yeah, but it's like a map and a half.
Yeah.
So it's not like 2 big maps. It's just 2.
Ironically,
it's 2 slightly smaller maps.
Ironically, Antietam was my go-to Civil War battle, because that's what when I was painting Civil War miniatures, I based my orders of battle on Antietam, because I mean, to me, that's the all-star game of the Civil War, right? I mean, you got just about everybody there, other than Grant
and McClellan, unfortunately.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like pre-Chancellorsville, so you got Stonewall Jackson there, Longstreet's there.
Yep, AP Hill's there, Jeb Stewart's there. I mean, just about the whole crew's there in their heyday. I will do something with Antietam eventually. One of the reasons I did Shattered Union was so that I could fiddle around with the scale. So we might do something like that eventually.
Herman, stupid question, very stupid and very
as usual, Dan.
And very interesting as usual. What was I gonna say? For God's sakes, you knocked me off my feet.
Sorry.
Okay, since you're becoming the foremost designer in American Civil War because of the volume of games, are you planning, or have you ever thought about, as Shelby Foote did, to create in the blind sword systems?
I thought you were going to ask if he was going to adopt a charming Southern accent.
No. Well, yeah. Are you planning on doing every battle? Ba 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 ba.
That's a lot of battles, Dan.
No.
A lot of battles.
It's a long life.
Not all of them are competitive either. Right. It's generally, there's very few games on Fredericksburg, for example, because it's hard to make a Fredericksburg game.
That's funny you should mention Fredericksburg. I'm actually doing Fredericksburg for Shattered Union because
there's ways to do it, but you got to figure out how do you kind of drive that game without either pushing the Union player into Burnside idiocy or completely going off the rails. Right. That's a challenge that somebody trying to design a game about Fredericksburg has to face up to.
Right, and that's why I agreed to do it, because there's so few games on the battle, and for good reasons. I mean, but
it's so one-sided.
It's
not really that it's one-sided. It's that it's a pretty sound shellacking based on damn stupid decisions made by the Union commander.
Oh, there's Fred. Hey, Fred.
The legendary Fred Manzo is in the chat.
Yes. Yeah, he just spilled the beans. There will be one soon.
That's why I put that up.
So there's going to be a discussion after the show. Fred, God damn it!
But I agree. So if you want to know why I got into this designing thing in the first place, it's just because of battles like Fredericksburg or doing a solo game on Pickett's Charge. I like the challenges of doing that. So I said, I'm doing a game on Fredericksburg because there's so few of them. That's why I did Champion Hill. That's why I did the Hill of Death. I think there's only one other game on Champion Hill, maybe two.
Civil War Brigade series.
Yeah.
There might be one other one, but there's very few.
There's very few, and I don't know why. Yeah, Pemberton got his ass kicked, but it didn't have to be that way. And I think that's my argument for Fredericksburg and so many other battles. Yeah, one side got their ass kicked, but it didn't have to be that way. If the pontoon bridges get down there in time, maybe the Union over. Don't forget, Lee was in no position to defend that sector. He had to have Stonewall and everybody else racing down there to defend that river line. And if those pontoon bridges hadn't been delayed, who knows what would have happened. So I watched it. Actually, Artie, you should check this out. There was a special that I watched on YouTube. Was it YouTube or the History Channel on Fredericksburg?
All the best stuff is on YouTube.
It was so well done. It was.
I mean, it clearly wasn't on the History Channel then. So there's a question asked. You don't need to look for it there, unless you're talking about the one with the alien
channel anymore. Now it would probably some other obscure channel, but it was so well done about this one Union. Was it? I think his last name was Adams. Was it? I don't know. He actually participated in the first amphibious assault in U.S. history because they got on the pontoon boats and actually rowed across the river and basically did a D-Day type landing, right? And he had to engage in house-to-house fighting in Fredericksburg. So it was like the first real house-to-house fighting that occurred. It was very interesting. And then they talked, of course, about the Angel of Mary's Heights, the one Confederate soldier who, at night, there were so many wounded Union guys, he grabbed all the canteens from the other Confederate soldiers, jumped over the fortifications, the stone wall, and went out there and started giving water to the Union soldiers. Great stories in Fredericksburg. That is Hero Quest behind me. Have you played that?
The new fancy Kickstarted version?
No, I actually bought that used, and get this, Artie. I got it fully painted for $100.
Well, that's nice. That's not the old one though.
No, that's the new one.
So, because I had the old one, I'm that kind of person that can recognize the box by its shape. So, now you see, Hero Quest back in the day came in a long flat box like a board game.
Actually, it was Wayne Hansen told me the solo app, the app to play that solo is really good. So he said, you got to get it. Says, all right, I saw this copy and I'm like, I actually thought it was a joke at the beginning. It was $150. Everything's painted and it includes both expansions. And I'm like, dude, you're not pulling my leg with this, are you?
Oh, I can't paint that in an hour and a half. So that's for sure.
Yep. But that is Hero Quest. I'm a geek with dungeon crawlers and stuff like that too.
So since we're on the subject of games, Herman, Plum Island Horror, there's like what, 1 million copies of P500 already? What the hell is taking so long?
Be great to have that out by Halloween, huh, Herman?
What the hell is taking so long?
God, it has been an art for 3 months. It's been in the art.
I was speculating about this. This is kind of an atypical game, right? It's basically a horror game for GMT. They haven't really done that much in that space.
Well, it's a cooperative. It's a multiplayer cooperative horror game.
What should be their
but
biggest
because
seller?
It's a horror game, it's got to be all art, right? They can't just like repurpose photographs of MacArthur.
Right.
Somebody's got to draw some stuff. So
devil's advocate, for God's sake.
I'm just saying, this is not Herman's fault. It's your fault.
No, my poor Terry, that was the artist, Terry Leeds. He's not doing NATO symbols or anything like that.
Man, I wish these were NATO symbols. This sucks. I hate that guy.
So, so I'm hoping that he, as an artist, is is just loving the fact that this is totally different than anything else he's done, but it's probably also quite difficult, involved. I don't know. The thing is, I asked Ken, I said, how's it going within the art department? And he goes, I don't know. We haven't seen anything yet. It's all just going to come out in one shot. So somehow I have to proofread all this stuff in one dump. So I guess I'll be busy that week.
So it's not going to be out by Halloween is what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's just too bad because that would have been a great marketing thing, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fair statement. If Terry's doing it, it's going to look really nice when it's done.
Oh, Terry did the map for At Any Cost, and I still think it's one of the best maps, you know, of any of my games. Certainly, it's fantastic.
Even my favorite like war game map artists, of whom there are many, have done maps that I just look at and say, yeah, I don't think that works. I haven't seen anything that Terry Leeds has done that I doesn't think isn't absolutely terrific.
Yeah, Terry's fantastic. I'm looking. So bottom line is, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this, right? Because you're talking about, you know, creatures and civilians and a map that's an area map, but it's a modern island. So it's going to be all sorts of. It's all going to be all sorts of weird stuff.
And what year are we talking about, Herman? What's the what do you call it there?
The year that the game is set in.
Very good, very good.
It doesn't have.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Past. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I thought it was going to be like the '60s or something.
No.
What does it feel like? I mean, I think it'd be a bit specious to put a date like an actual. This takes place on June 4th, 1952. No, that seems a bit silly, but I mean, sort of, what does it feel like?
Interestingly enough, the crisis happens on October 24th, which we just right. And the reason I picked that is because it's Nancy's birthday. So I mean, that's why I picked that. But
it's close to Halloween, so that's good too.
Mm-hmm. So it's the recent past, Dan. And if you read the intro to the game, we're not allowed to disclose what year we are forbidden by government edict that we're not allowed to disclose the exact year that this occurred.
You're kidding me.
Historical event, you know.
Mike was letting us know that random mystery artist Barry has done Liberty or Death and Tank Duel.
He says Terry.
Barry.
You're serious,
Barry.
Herman. You had to get permission or you had to ask and seriously?
No.
Ah, for God's sakes, man.
The whole game is couched in the narrative that this actually happened, but nobody knows about it. And we discovered the documentation that allowed us to design a game about this. And we interviewed all the people, and we got hold of some secret documents that gave us the inside scoop on all this.
You should have said that was real. I would have believed you.
Okay.
He would have. That's true.
I would have believed you.
Yeah, Dan is like, maybe this is an Italian thing, actually. That's actually, I'm not being racist here, because my mom does the same thing, where I could tell her the most ridiculous line of bullshit just because I know she'll totally flip out. Yeah, Mom, we've talked this over, and we're gonna move to Svalbard to open up a llama farm. Oh my God, you're moving to Svalbard! Where's Svalbard? No sense of when I'm pulling her leg or not.
It's funny that you say that because just 5 minutes away, there's a llama farm around my.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Dan lives at the llama farm.
I thought this was a Canadian thing, so maybe it's an Italian thing. Maybe it's an Italian-Canadian thing. I don't know.
Ah, God, that's funny. That's funny. Anyways, we should have done it. It could have been an Orson Welles type thing, you know.
Well,
there you go.
Well, that's basically the idea, is that it's couched in that kind of Orson Welles type of thing. Yes.
Hey, Artie, who is this guy? Who is this guy?
That's the legend himself, Fucko.
Yeah, who is he?
He's just a guy that plays games in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, I'm coming down.
Okay, come on down. He's taller than you.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. All I have to do is I don't have to reach up to hit him in the nuts.
I'm all taller than him, so you know.
Christ almighty.
You should see Herman next to him. It'll look like like Mr. Rourke and Tattoo.
Oh man, I can't wait for that game to come out, Herman, because I'm more of a because I want to play.
It's going to be better than the Fantasy Island remake. I guarantee this right now. Guaranteed by me and Herman to be better than the Fantasy Island remake.
Absolutely.
Look at this guy. He's egging me on. He's egging me on. Is he crazy?
He's ready. He's ready.
He crazy?
He's a belligerent.
He's a little on this guy.
He's a little belligerent.
Oh my
I'm gonna go psycho on him, man.
He's ready for you.
Look at this.
He's ready for you.
I'm gonna bite his nuts.
You might. You can headbutt him in the junk. I mean,
Christ, I'm a wild animal.
It's okay. We could get demonetized this week, so it's all good. Say whatever you want.
Oh,
yes, it's on my channel.
Right, exactly.
Boy, what a fan base you got, Dan.
I swear to God. I know people.
So
I know David Thompson.
Speaking of the
David's not really gonna beat anybody up for you, though, is he?
No, but he's gonna give me the intel.
Well, he might. He might.
Hey, Herman, talking about intel, are you a secretly NSA CIA?
I'm a lifetime long accountant. Well, I'm retired now, but that's what I did.
This is why we don't provide the guests the questions in advance, by the way.
That's right. That's your Mark Herman fetish thing going on there.
Yeah, I'm Mark Herman. Eh? What a secret guy.
So let me ask a more serious question, because we don't have a ton of time left, and I kind of want to see what your answer is to this. So it's you've kind of got your blind sword system, which I think we can all agree has been very well received. I played it. I like it. I bought them all. So
thank you for that.
So, but then you've got like several branches or different forks of that, all of which cover Civil War. And I know that the sort of design goals are a bit different for those, and that's why they're slightly different systems. But are you afraid at all that you'll kind of split the audience into the different little niches of the different systems between Blind Swords and Black Swan and Shattered Union?
That's a great question, actually. Part of the problem is I get bored with systems after a while, and I don't want to just keep cranking out games in the same system. So I
got like 50 guys making Blind Swords games for you, though. You're covered.
And that's interesting you say that, because that's why I actually was speaking with Revolution. I said, look, I don't think I need to design any more Blind Swords games. You got guys just cranking them out on autopilot now, right?
They just show up in the mailbox. Oh, it's a new Blind Swords game. Oh. Guess Perryville's coming out next week then.
Right, and I'm honored that all these great designers like Steve Carey, who I met at the Consum World Expo years ago, great guy, finally came out. He's designed a game on South Mountain that just came out.
I loved him when he was calling for the Cubs too.
And so I guess what happened was there's a reason that each
this sounds like a Hawkwind album if I've ever heard of one. I will tell you.
Did you just mention Hawkwind?
Yes. Dan, I know Dan knows who Hawkwind is.
Oh yeah, Lemmy, man.
I had Hawkwind Live, I believe. I had that.
I had the same one.
Yeah, I think this is literally we have all owned the Hawkwind Live Chronicles.
They covered the girl with the boobs in the 60s and something. Yeah. God, I had fun with that.
Oh yeah, but each derivation, there was a reason for it, right? So when we hit the top end of the Blind Swords game with what we thought was Longstreet Attacks, I kept getting people to ask me, well, how come you don't do all of Gettysburg, right? So then I had to design a version of Blind Swords that would be scaled up, right? So I first did the Devils to Pay as kind of a test, a test design. Tiny Battle is great for that, where I can just throw something out there and test it and see how people react to it. And that became a Most Fearful Sacrifice. So I can do all of Gettysburg using the Blind Swords philosophy. Thank you, Rob. And, but scaling it up. So now we can do these bigger battles. So, as I've told you the last time we talked, Chickamauga is the next one up on the list.
I'm all over that.
Right.
You're probably going to beat GMT on that too, I would guess.
Okay, well, I would try. And Shattered Union, which is the Hill of Death in Fredericksburg, and Claude's doing one on Port Republic, Cross Keys, and Brandy Station and all that. That was because Mark lost the rights to the Civil War series that Tiny Battle was doing, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
Right. I forget the names of it. Yeah. So he said, can you do a small Civil War series for Tiny Battle? And I said, well, of course I can. So what I did was I said, all right, well, what we'll do then is we'll make it a simpler system, a more accessible system, and we'll do battles that most people don't cover, right? You know, not another Gettysburg, Antietam, Shiloh, all that kind of stuff. We'll do battles that we'll look out there and see, well, what haven't people been doing? So that's why I did Champion Hill, and I'll do Fredericksburg, and Claude's going to do Cross Keys, Port Republic, and Brandy Station. All the battles that kind of have gotten overlooked or lightly handled in the wargame community. So there is a reason that I kind of shot off in these different directions. And then, you know, I like designing new systems, to be honest with you.
I was just about to ask you, if it ain't broke, why fix it, Herman?
Well, I mean, I haven't, you know, the regimental side hasn't stopped. I mean, it's just like Artie said, it's just that other people are doing it. And there's so many of them. I mean, I was originally, to be honest with you, I was originally going to do Stones River. That was supposed to be my next one. And I'm so busy now. And I asked Roger, I said, do you mind if Claude does Stones River? Because that's really he's got a real particular interest in that battle. So we decided to do it that way. So it's not that any series has stopped. It's, you know, just other people have taken it up, and then I can go on and do other things. And I like to start new series, you know.
Okay, so for you as a designer, then the mechanics is your canvas.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, you mentioned games like Hero Quest and other games that I play that are not war games. I get ideas for mechanics from them, which I talk about a lot. And I think most war game designers should do that. I think you should go out and play dungeon crawls and RPGs and Ameritrash and whatever else you can get your hold, because there's mechanics out there that are really good mechanics, and there's no reason they can't be used in war games.
Our mechanics, are they inspiring? The mechanics.
Yes. It gets you out. It gets you out of the tunnel vision of how to do things for a war game. So it just opens up the, you know, the brain paths, and you start thinking about, well, why can't I handle command and control this way using this mechanic?
So Herman, just make me understand this in a music sense. How would mechanics inspire you in a musical sense?
Dan, the mechanics is the instrument, right?
Mechanics
aren't telling you what you need to do with the instrument necessarily.
So
that creativity comes from you.
Well, he can't change the instrument because he's a master of one instrument. Then he's got to learn another instrument, which takes many hours. That's why I'm confused with the mechanics, Herman.
So you're saying he's the Paul McCartney of wargaming?
Oh, Jesus Christ, eh?
I mean,
yeah, well, hey, look, if the shoe
fits, we can roll with that.
If the shoe fits, you know what I'm saying, Herman? It's like you're changing the core, as far as I'm concerned, or is it the core?
No, it's just a different way to approach it. So if you have command and control problems in a game, how do you simulate that in a game, right? You know, the old way was to give a commander a commander chit and give him a command rating and roll against it or something like that. So what other ways are there to do that? So right now, Fred and I are working a game on the Battle of Königsgrätz in 1866, and I'm using a variation of the river system.
You guys got all this free time. We could really use some help with the Charles S. Roberts Awards. I'm just saying.
And the river system is, if anybody's played Conan or Batman Gotham City, it's this wonderful activation system where you have this track going from, let's say, 1 to 5, and you put units on this track, and that's how much it costs you to activate that unit. And once you activate it, you pick it up, you pick the marker up, you put it at the end, and everything shuffles down, right? It becomes a little cheaper. But the thing you just activated now is in the most expensive box. And if you want to activate it again, it's going to cost you a premium to do it. So now the game becomes, how do you set up your markers? How do you set up your, in Königsgrätz, it would be, how do you lay out your cores so you want to activate them in a certain order so that they support one another and that you can afford to do it. But sometimes something happens and you have to pay the more expensive price because you've got to activate that core because of what your opponent did. So that's one example of something that, as Dan swats.
Dan gives us a percussion test.
That fly's been around for a month, man.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, I believe that fly's been around since 1972.
Thank you, Robert. I do like Led Zeppelin. I like their first 4 albums. I didn't like Houses of the Holy. Led Zeppelin 2 was my favorite album of theirs.
What about Physical
I liked
Graffiti?
them better when they were called Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters.
That's funny. What about Physical Graffiti? Talking about Howlin' Wolf.
No,
there's some good Zeppelin. I mean, you can't really hate Zeppelin, but
come on, Herman, grow up.
I'm an old school hard rock guy, man. I like the original Zeppelin albums, the first 4 or so. Then they got too weird.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Boy, have I got some shit for you.
Hey,
so Stigler is talking, asked it on directly related. I'd be curious to see if you think that blind swords can be adapted to American War of Independence, but depending how you define tactical, if you want really, really tactical, yeah, I think Battles of the Age of Reason is where you want to go. It's supposed to be easier to deal with than Labatt.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know if it would translate quite the same way.
I don't know that I am a total noob when it comes to American Revolution. I got the big box from GMT and I got something from Revolution, and that's not it. But I mean, I don't know that much. Certainly not about the war part, more about the politics of it. So I have no idea, but certainly the battles feel differently to me. So I don't know if it would necessarily be a great idea to say, I'm going to take this Revolutionary War battle, we'll say Saratoga, and I'm going to try to get my hands as a designer around the problems faced by the commanders at Saratoga, and then develop a system that brings those problems and decisions to the player, and then take Chickamauga and then try and replicate it with that same system that addressed a different set of problems. I don't know that that's necessarily a great idea. I think you'd have to probably make some significant changes. Not that it couldn't work or you couldn't make it work.
Well, yeah, the problem in American Revolution is you're really talking very tactical, like battalions, right? And once you get that low tactically, then you got to start worrying about lines and facing and formations and all that kind of stuff. Then you're getting into another area. I mean, you're almost talking miniatures gaming at that point.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people play those along with Napoleonics. A lot of people prefer to play those topics in miniatures, right?
Yep.
Because I mean, some people like Milli Vanilli too.
What was that last question that was up? I was about to answer, but now I forgot what it was.
Cross between Commands and Colors and deck building might be a fruitful path.
Yeah, it's interesting because Commands and Colors, I love that system for its simplicity, and it still has some interesting, command problems as far as deck card.
And there is a Commands and Colors American Revolution as well.
Right. And I love deck building games. I mean, that's one of my favorite mechanics. I mean, obviously David Thompson's proved that you can do deck building with wargaming, right? I mean, Undaunted is exactly that.
I believe there is a rule for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's one of the chaotic things that can happen in battle, right?
You see. Anyways, look, we've passed our time. Herman, this was fun.
I'm always having a good time with you guys.
And that's all. And by the way, what are you drinking?
That is my go-to cheap one. Is Wild Turkey 101, 101 proof.
Yep. Real 101 proof.
Yep.
Jesus,
I haven't had Wild Turkey in years.
Yeah, they've actually.
There was probably a bad experience in there at some point.
They've reset their reputation. They're actually considered a very good bourbon now.
That's true. Yeah. Is it different? Did they change the mash bill or something, or is it the same Wild Turkey?
Yeah, they got a new head dude or dudette. Okay. I'm not sure. It might be a woman. It might be a woman distiller that does that.
There are a few master distillers who are women.
Yeah. Wild Turkey, eh? I don't know if we can get it in town anymore, but anyways,
you probably can. It's a pretty big brand.
Herman, I love you, man. You're incredible. I learned so much.
Thank you for asking me to come on.
The thing is, you just freaked me out when you said you like to change systems, because for me, it's like I want to change instrument. It's like what I've put 20 years on it. I'm going to change instrument and learn another one and take another 10 years building this up. So I don't know if I don't know if it's the same thing. If the mechanics of a game,
well, but it's like you writing a new arrangement, right? I mean, you don't play roll over Beethoven 15 different ways, right?
Okay.
You're doing a whole new composition.
Okay.
And for me personally, I like to change from a big historical war game, which, let me tell you, they're a lot of work. I mean, people, they're a lot of work because they require a lot of research and a lot of planning out and a lot of scenarios. And then I like to do a horror or a sci-fi game. For me, it's kind of liberating design-wise to just design for fun, right?
I get it. Okay. It's like once I was composing a piece and it was too heavy, so I decided to compose a silly piece, which was fun to get me out of my blues type thing, you know? Okay, look, I get it, Herman.
When I design sci-fi or horror, I'm laughing half the time.
Exactly. It's fun.
It's just like you come up with a rule and you come up with an effect, go, oh, that would be so much fun. Now we have to justify it. Oh, I know how we'll justify it, you know. And boom.
That's got to be very freeing, actually, to design in those genres where you could kind of make the game fiction work to support your mechanics. If you have a really interesting mechanical idea, you can kind of build the game around that.
Your main goal is, you know, how do you challenge the player, but how do you make it fun for the player? Like, you know, so they're just having a good time with it, and that's a good offset with the historical war games.
Herman, is it easier to do a sci-fi freestyle type game?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Except for the artist.
He's right. It's hell for the artist. And the thing is, with games like horror and sci-fi, artwork is really important, right? Because it's all part of that immersive experience of what you're going through. So yeah. Uh-oh.
Okay.
Uh-oh. There's a confrontation coming. It's coming.
That's true.
Herman, thank you very much, man. I swear to God.
Thanks for having me. Tomorrow's the Kickstarter for anybody who wants the second edition.
Yep. And like the first 2 people or 3 people or something like that get their game at a deep, deep discount too.
Right. The first 2 people who pledge will get it for $5.
Boy, that's a deal.
Yep.
And tell Mark Herman to stop sending his goons.
You mean Mark Herman or Mark Walker, or what are you doing?
Mark Walker, for God's sake, man.
He's always got Mark Herman on the mind. I'm telling you.
They're all part of the Mark cabal anyway.
Okay, I'm playing the ending thing now.
He's playing the ending thing now. Good night, everybody.